What's up guys, and welcome to a very familiar car, the Toyota GR86. It's been almost a year since I sold my Gen 2 BRZ, this car's mechanical twin, and I have not driven a Gen 2 BRZ or GR86 since. So today we'll be driving this very lightly modified example. The owner, Nolan, has put around 24,000 miles on it. It's a 2022 model year premium, so we do have the nicer interior and the bigger wheels. And Nolan has modified this for the 86 Drive Challenge Time Attack series here in California. So we've got G-loc pads, Stoptech front rotors, Centric rears, a Verus brake master cylinder brace, camber bolts up front for about 1.5 degrees, control arms as well for about 1.5 degrees of rear camber. We're on the stock 18-inch wheels with some 225 section width Yokohama V601 tires. Very mild setup, basically OEM plus. And we've got a Corsa exhaust. This car weighs a little over 2,800 pounds. 6-speed manual transmission. You can also get it with a 6-speed torque converter automatic. Rear limited slip differential. It's a Torsen unit from the factory. 2.4 liter FA24 Subaru engine. Flat 4. It makes 228 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque. These numbers just roll off the tongue at this point because I've reviewed so many of these, mostly my own, and I've rattled off these numbers probably at least a dozen times. All that out of the way, let's just see if almost a year later, this car still is as fun as I remember it being. And ultimately, do I regret selling mine? Obviously, I moved to the Integra Type S as my daily and track car. Very different car. It's turbocharged, it's front wheel drive, it's much bigger and heavier. I'm very happy with it. But is this GR86 still the more fun to drive vehicle? It feels almost weird driving one of these cars again. It's like deja vu. Oh, these G-loc pads don't have a lot of initial bite. Got to get really deep into the pedal to get the car stopped. Right away, this car feels so nimble, even compared to my Integra Type S. The eagerness with which this car turns into a corner is second to none for this price range of car. Love heel towing with this 6-speed manual. The throttle response, it's a little hit or miss with the FA24 engine and how it's tuned in this car. Overall, the response is good, but there's a little bit of just throttle lag or throttle hang, or rev hang I guess would be the more common term for it, where between upshifts sometimes the revs take a little bit longer than you expect to drop down. Very quick steering ratio, and with stock suspension with a little bit of camber, this car doesn't corner flat, but it does corner eagerly. But because the suspension is a little bit on the softer side, even though the rear spring rate is higher compared to the BRZ, you feel what this car is doing. It's up on its tippy toes. It communicates what it's doing through the chassis, but not so much the steering. The steering's not terrible by any means, but this electric power steering rack is a bit light on feedback, and the on-center feel, well, it could be improved. I mean, I don't miss the lack of power with this car, and back when I owned the car, I never really complained about the lack of power, but now that I have a 320 horsepower car in my Integra Type S, this definitely feels lacking in a straight line. But because it is naturally aspirated, because it is so lightweight and nimble, it's still a ton of fun to drive in the corners. But on the straights, I still do feel like I could use a little more oomph. I would love to try one of these cars with forced induction, either a supercharger or a turbocharger. I think it could potentially transform the car. Maybe not as sharp on track, but for canyon driving, it would solve one of the weaknesses of the car. Now I'm talking about driving dynamics, not reliability. I'm not even gonna go into the whole oil starvation issue with these FA24 engines. It seems like there's a pretty good fix now for you 86 track junkies. But as a canyon car, you really don't have to worry about that. wants to step out just a little bit. Second gear corners, give it full throttle. You don't have to be afraid with this car. It's so easy to control at the limit, and because it does have a modest power output, it's not overly snappy. It has a relatively long wheelbase, and the car is just overall so easy to drive. That's why I loved this car when I owned it, and even to this day, I will not deny how much more nimble and just tossable this car is, even compared to my Integra Type S. My car feels so much more serious and hunkered down, even when it was completely stock. That car's goal was to go as quickly as possible around a corner, given the limitations of it being based on a Civic platform, obviously. But this car doesn't really care so much about cornering speeds or straight line acceleration. It's all about the experience and how much fun you can have, how big of a smile it'll put on your face. The purity of this generation BRZ and GR86. It's a back to basics formula that has always worked for the driving enthusiast, and it still works today, and no other manufacturer makes a car like this anymore. Everything else has massive power, massive grip, massive weight. This car really is from another era. But you get modern creature comforts, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and with the 2023 model year, you actually get some driving assists as well. If you want the luxuries of a new car, the warranty of a new car, but you want back to basics, old school driving dynamics and thrills, the GR86 and BRZ are still an absolute bargain in today's market. First gear. The engine doesn't make the best noise, but at least it does build and pitch towards its 7,400 RPM redline, and it builds in power as well. And even though it's not the most special engine in the world, or even in this class of car, it does match the overall ethos of this car. Lightweight, responsive, modest amounts of performance, but everything just meshes together so well and gives you such a cohesive and fun little car to drive. Shifter is pretty good as well, but not as good as my Integra Type S shifter. So with that being said, guys, GR86 and BRZ Gen 2, still just a phenomenal driver's car in every sense of the word, and for the money, I mean $30,000. How can you go wrong? A big shout out to Nolan for letting me experience this car once again. Maybe I'll own another car like this, probably not an actual Gen 2 BRZ or GR86, but it does have me itching to get back into a lightweight FR naturally aspirated manual transmission car as a fun car or a track car. So let me know your thoughts on the BRZ and GR86. Is it still the most fun car you can buy for $30,000? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.